Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Frank Mularcik, and in this video we're going to be going into my dividend tracking spreadsheet and looking at some more information about it and how I'm getting this data and some other data that I am tracking. So I started a series on this spreadsheet just last week, so if you missed that video, definitely I'll leave that link in the description. You can check that one out as well. But in this video we're going to be looking at some of the other columns to the right in my spreadsheet, and then we're going to be also looking at some of the graphs that I'm using in this main page here. So we ended right on this P column last video. So the next one here is the dividend frequency column, and that's basically just how often the company pays a dividend, how many times per year. So for most of the companies I own, it's 4 because they pay dividends quarterly. For Carnival, they don't pay a dividend currently, so that number is 0. And basically, the purpose of this is for our peer sustainability ratio calculation in the next column here. And basically, that is actually named after this guy, Pierre.
Yo, Pierre, you want to come out here?
Who also has an investing channel, so I would recommend checking that out. He has some pretty good videos. But basically, it just tells you how many shares of a company you can buy with the dividend every time you receive that dividend. So basically, you are taking the annual dividend amount. To do this calculation, you take the annual dividend amount you receive. So for the case of Aflac, it's $1.60, and then you divide that by the number of times they pay per year, which is 4, and that gives you the number of, or the amount of dividends that you receive each pay period or each quarter. And then you divide that amount by the current share price, and that tells you how many shares you can buy every single time you get paid. So for most of my companies, it's a pretty small number because right now, they are pretty small positions. My portfolio is pretty small, but that's okay. I'm looking forward to seeing these numbers grow over time, and also as they increase their dividends, that number will grow as well. And the next column here is just the weighted PSR, and that is basically just so that we can get an understanding of the average for our portfolio. So we weight each of these values based on the weighting in the portfolio. And then we can add them up at the bottom here. So that calculation in itself is, the actual PSR times the equity amount of that position divided by the total equity of all my positions in the portfolio. And then we can add all those values in this column up and get the average PSR for the whole portfolio. And then the next column is the years of increasing dividends. That's pretty simple as well, just how many years that company has been increasing their dividend consecutively. Every single year they pay a higher dividend amount in total than the last year. So you can see these numbers here, and I enter these numbers manually as well, and then I weight them based on their equity percentage in the same manner as I did just explain for the PSR, and then add those up at the bottom here to get the average amount of years of increasing dividends. The next two columns here are the ex-dividend date and the pay date, and those basically tell us the ex-dividend date is the last day you can buy the company in order to receive that dividend for that quarter, and then the pay date is the date on which they actually pay out the dividend into your brokerage account. And so the way I'm getting this data is just pulling it from a Python script, or I'm using a Python script to just insert it into the spreadsheet here, and I run that script every single day automatically. I have that set up, and I will definitely explain that script in more detail sometime later in another video in the future about the spreadsheet. But for now, I'll just say that I'm using that script to get these dates in here. And then I'm using some conditional formatting here to turn these cells different colors based on some different conditions. So you can see here, I'm turning it red if the date is between 11 days in the future and 30 days in the future. So that means it's happening sometime in the next month, either the ex-dividend date or the pay date. And then if it's between tomorrow and 10 days in the future, then I'm turning the cell yellow. And then if it's today, if the date is today, then I'm turning the cell green, and that can just give me a visual indication of when I'm going to be paid, or when the ex-dividend dates are going to be for these companies, just with a quick visual look. And how you actually do that is you go into conditional formatting and you select your range. So I'm selecting these two columns, And then we're going to format the cells. If they're between, we're going to choose this is between condition for the first two. And you just do equals today plus however many days out you want to go. And then for the second one, it's just the further out date. So this is for the red one. So I have equals today plus 11 and today plus 30. So that's going to basically make it red if it's between 11 and 30 days out. And then I do a similar thing for the yellow with is between today plus 1 and today plus 10. And then for the green, which is actually today, I choose is equal to, not greater than, I'm sorry. I'll have to reselect that, is equal to. If it's is equal to equals today, then it will be green. So obviously none of these are today because it's a weekend right now when I'm recording this, and no companies are going to pay out on the weekend. So that's how I do that conditional formatting. And the next column here is just the beta. And so this is just a measure of volatility of the stock, and actually have made a video in the past, probably about a year ago, on what beta is and what it can tell us about a company. But I just like to keep a look at that for my portfolio for each position. And this is another metric that I'm using that Python script to grab that data for and insert it into my spreadsheet. And then I'm doing a similar thing here and weighting each value based on the position in the portfolio and adding them up here to get the average value for the whole portfolio at the bottom. And I'm doing pretty much the same thing for these last two metrics, which are the 3-year dividend CAGR. So that's the average basically it's the average amount that the company has raised their dividend in the past 3 years. And so I like to keep a track of that for all my positions, and then I do the same thing. I weight it based on the amount of the portfolio that position is, and then I add them up to get an average for the entire portfolio. And right now that's sitting right around 9%, which is something I'm pretty happy with. And then the last one here is the payout ratio. And this one, I actually had this in my spreadsheet at some point, and it, obviously it's still there, but the payout ratio is not being updated by my Python script anymore. So these values are a few months old, I think. And I think the main reason I took it out is that the data was just not super reliable that I was getting. So in the future, I probably hope to get a better data source to get the payout ratio. But for now, I'm not really using that anymore. It's just kind of still sitting there in my spreadsheet. And then another thing I want to show is this summary over here down to the left. I just kind of summarize most of these values that I'm adding up along the bottom. That kind of summarize a lot of these values that we talked about, but for the entire portfolio instead of for individual stocks. So I have that portfolio value, the annual dividend income, and then I look at that dividend income monthly, daily, hourly. So this monthly is just the dividend income divided by 12, daily divided by 365.25, and then hourly divided by 8,760, which is the number of hours in a year. And then this wage dividend income, this is like the income as if I were to work a 40-hour per week job, how much I would earn as a wage each hour. So that's only 2,080 because there's approximately 2,000, but if you want to be exact, it's 2,080 working hours in a year. Which is just 52 times 40. And then this next one is the day change, which is just the total equity change of the entire portfolio on the day. And then the dividend yield here. And then I just summarize these average values. So the PSR, years of increasing dividends, beta, and 3-year CAGR. And next I want to talk about these two types of graphs that I have. The first one being this annual income meter. And I like this one. I think it's just kind of cool. It's actually called a gauge. So if you want to make one of these, I'm just going to sort of walk you through the process of making it. We can just click insert chart, and then it's going to create us a generic chart right here. But we want to go down here on the type and select gauge. So that's right down here under other gauge chart. And then for the data range, we want to select, for mine, I'm just doing the annual dividend income. So we're basically just going to select that one cell that has the annual dividend income, and then we can, as you can see, it's already basically populated the general format of that gauge, but we can customize some things over here. So we can customize the style, maybe the background color, make it look a little bit different. We can customize the border color, which you can really barely even see. We can customize the default font, something like that, something that looks weird. And then we can also change some of the things for the gauge. So we can change the actual range for the values. So this one started out with 0 to 100, but we can change it 0 to 500, something like that. And then we can give individual sub ranges, sort of different colors. So we want to say like 0 to maybe 200 would be red. It'll color that portion red, and then like 200 to, I don't know, 350 would be orange, and then the rest 350 to 500 would be green. That's just something you can do to kind of give some visual indications on your graph, which I think is kind of cool. And then you can change some stuff here with the chart and axis titles. So you can change the title, so like income, something like that. Looks like my caps lock is on, sorry. Income. Then you can change the font, obviously. You can change the font size. You can change the text color. All pretty basic stuff that you guys can probably figure out on your own. So that's the general overview of this type of chart that I use, and you can size it down obviously to make it look a little bit better. So that's that one. Let me know if you do have any questions for that. And now we're going to move on to the other one, which is sort of a pie chart here, like this. And it's basically showing us the equity of our portfolio by different sectors as a percentage. So what we want to do for this one is, again, click the insert chart button, and then it's going to create us this generic chart. We want to change the type down here to a donut pie chart. So that has a little hole in here. I mean, you could make a regular pie chart. I just like how this one looks a little bit better. And then we want to choose our data range. So the first data range we want to choose is the sector, the column of sectors. So we can choose that one right here. Just select all of these right like that. And then we can add another range, and this range is going to be for the actual portfolio values. Sometimes it's not scrolling. Okay, now it's scrolling. So this is going to be for the portfolio values of each sector. So we want to just select this equity column, but we want to make sure we don't include the total value, because that would mess everything up. It would be a bit skewed, but we can select that column as well, and then click OK. And as you can see, it looks sort of like what we want, but it has some of the sectors listed multiple times. So it's basically just listing out each position, what percentage it is based on its sector. So here industrials is listed here at 5.5%. It's listed over here at 3.8%. So it's listed multiple times. And the way we can get rid of that is we can click this aggregate button on the right side, and that basically aggregates it based on this data range we have selected of C24. And so that sort of aggregates it. And then if we go over here, we can customize some stuff, and obviously you can change the color again to something else. I honestly just like white just fine. You can change the border. And then the one thing I like is if you change it to 3D, I think it looks a little bit cooler. Obviously you can do whatever you want, but that's what I do. And then for the pie chart, you can change the size of the actual whole, make it look a little bit different. I like the 50%. I think that looks the best. And then you can give each slices like labels, something like that. But it doesn't really show up on the smaller ones, so I just kind of leave those off since it has these little tags anyway. And then you can change, the actual color of each slice individually, which I think is kind of cool. And then you can, sort of make one stand out a little bit from the others. So this one you can make it stand out a little bit, which is kind of interesting. And then another thing you can do over here, obviously change the title and fonts and stuff like that. Again, that's pretty straightforward. Equity, something like that, or maybe sector, whatever. Title doesn't really matter that much, at least for your own personal spreadsheet. And then the legend, you can change the position of the legend. So if you do it like this, then it lists out the colors, and they're not actually pointing. I like it where they're pointing, so I just do, if you do auto, it makes them point to each little slice, which I think is the easiest to read. So that's what I do. So that's about it for this chart. Again, if you do have any questions about it, let me know. That was for the equity by sector. And if we wanted to do it by the dividend income, we would just, instead of selecting this column for our data, we would just select this annual dividend paid column, and it would do the same thing. And the last thing I do want to talk about here is a filter. And these little triangles across the top indicate that there's a filter here. And what that allows us to do is actually, basically sort our spreadsheet easily. And so right now it's sorted by equity, but if we wanted to sort it by the annual dividends, so the ones that pay the lowest amount of dividends to us is at the top and the ones with the highest is at the bottom, what we do is we'd go to the annual dividend column and sort it A to Z. And now the company Carnival that pays us the smallest amount in dividends, which is $0, is at the top, and then the company AbbVie that pays us the most is at the bottom. And I think that's pretty cool. Obviously, you can do it pretty much with any column here. So you could do it by the name, sort them by the name, something like that. Or you could sort them by the sector so that all the same sectors are together, something like that. Normally, I just leave it sorted by equity, but I think it's a cool tool to use to allow you to basically visualize and just see it sorted by different metrics. And I'm going to give you an example of that basically just in this tab here, just because it's kind of weird if you try to create a filter within a filter. So what we do is just select a range of data and then go to data, create a filter, and then it creates a filter where the top rows are sort of the items that are going to filter. So if we want to filter, for example, by the number of shares, we can select this here and it'll change around the columns so that it's all in order of ascending number of shares here. Or we could sort by the average cost, something like that. So that's just how the filter works, and just lets you basically sort data in an easy way that basically shifts all the columns, or sorry, all the rows together, so that the data doesn't get mixed up. So that's the basic concept that I wanted to show, and that's sort of what I wanted to show for this video for the spreadsheet. Definitely let me know if you do have any questions on what I talked about today. I was trying to go through it kind of fast so I could cover a lot of information. So if at any point you're confused, definitely pause it, go back, or ask a question. I would definitely be happy to answer those for sure. In the next video, I'll probably be covering some info about how I track my transactions and use that to calculate the number of shares I have and some of the other things like that that I use in my spreadsheet, which are pretty vital, I think. So definitely stay around for that one. I'll probably be releasing that in a week or two. But I just want to thank you guys for watching to the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one.